Was around 2019, we noticed that there was some traction happening around DropInBlog, and that was mostly because we had originally built it for like API based for these static sites, but then we saw that the no-code builders were starting to bubble up and become popular, and people were integrating our product with the no-code builders like Kartra and Webflow.
Jesse, I know you live in Bangkok. How did you settle there from Wisconsin?
I wouldn't say I'm fully settled. I'm technically still a digital nomad, but I do spend quite a bit of time in Bangkok. It's probably my homiest of homes. I'm usually here about half of the year. So I settled here, I guess, after traveling quite a bit. I lived in Latin America for quite a few years, and then I've been living in Asia for about the past 8 or so. So after about 8 years in living in Panama, where I actually lived, and then I started kind of nomading a little bit toward the end of that time, and then started coming to Asia and really fell in love with Bangkok around that point, traveled the region a bit, and then kind of kept gravitating back to Bangkok for a variety of reasons.
So you're the founder of DropInBlog. Maybe you can weave a history of your life journey with a story of DropInBlog, because it feels that they go hand in hand and it will help Zsolt.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I'm originally from the States, from Wisconsin, and I used to have a development agency. And that's what kind of got me into the internet and gave me some location independence, since those were clients that work that could be done online, right? So at some point, I decided I wanted to make a change from where I was living in Wisconsin, and found my way to Panama City, Panama, through a variety of odd circumstances, and I thought it was just going to be an experiment to kind of go there, and ended up loving it and lived there for quite a few years. And that's where I met my first SaaS founders, and met people that were doing substantially better than I was. And it gave me a taste into what was possible. So during that time is when we were trying different SaaS products and different other just products instead of service-based businesses. And it was at that time where our development customers had been asking us for a blog to add on to the static sites that we were building. Kind of our niche was doing static sites in PHP with some custom CMS and stuff. And then after, people would have their business for a couple of years, and then they would inevitably want to start doing content marketing. And then they would come back to us and they'd say, okay, cool, can we add a blog now? And then I'd say, well, you kind of have to add WordPress, and then we have to make a custom theme for you that looks like the old site and run it on a subdomain and all this. And then they all said, but that's why we went with you in the first place and did the static site and whatever, because we don't want to have WordPress. So then we thought, oh, well, if there was a blog that you could just drop into these existing sites, that would be cool. So that kind of planted the seed for us like a very long time ago. And then we eventually built it just for our customers, like around 2015 we launched it, and it was just like a side project, like just for our customers, and we had a few other side projects and was still focusing on the agency. But then around 2019 it started getting a little bit of traction, and that's when we decided to really lean into just DropInBlog. And you might notice the timeline here if you want to weave it into the personal stuff. Around 2015 is when I was like leaving Panama and coming to Asia. And that's when I met even more variety of people kind of in the digital nomad scene that were doing a lot more SaaS and just kind of leveling up their businesses. And so that's when I was really like pushing on some of the products that we had launched. We had a couple of other things besides DropInBlog. And then it was around 2019 when I was living in Asia and surrounded with a lot more ambitious people that we noticed that there was some traction happening around DropInBlog. And that was mostly because we had originally built it for like API based for these static sites, but then we saw that the no-code builders were starting to bubble up and become popular, and people were integrating our product with the no-code builders like Kartra and Webflow and these kind of things. And we were like, oh, now we actually have a market to market to is all of these builders. So now we can come in and say we're the blog solution for Thinkific and Teachable and Shopify and BigCommerce, and we have all these markets that we can go after versus just like add a blog to your static site, you know. So that's when the aha moment hit that we thought that there could be some traction. And that is when we sold our other products to get a little runway and unbundled the agency and kind of went all in on DropInBlog.
And so, from a revenue curve standpoint, so your MRR evolved from like in 2015, it was 2,000 a month. Is that
I
right?
mean, yeah, like it was like, obviously zero when we launched. And then it was kind of like bubbling at like, a couple $1,000s a month from like 2015 to like 2018 or something. And then, it was in 2019 when all of a sudden it kind of bumped up to like 8 or 9 or something. And then we were like, whoa, what's this? Because we weren't really doing, we weren't actively marketing. We were building it a little bit, but we were working on a bunch of other stuff too. We weren't really like paying attention. And then all of a sudden we saw that it was bubbling up. So we started digging into the customers that had signed up and say, who are these guys? And what are they doing? And then that's when it kind of, we saw the light that there was kind of no ceiling on this thing. We were like, oh, okay, there's a big market here.
And so today, so in 2019 it was around 8-10K, and today it's around 1 million ARR, right?
Yeah, we're bubbling right around there, which is very exciting place to be, starting from zero and being fully bootstrapped.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's a runaway success that took close to 10 years, but it's congratulations for your persistence because it's obviously worth a journey. You were a team of 3 co-founders. How big is the team now? And what's the makeup of the team?
Yeah, we are 3 co-founders. So me and one of the co-founders were founders of the agency, and then the third, the technical co-founder, he used to work for us on and off during the agency, and so we had learned our group synergy over the years doing agency work. And so when we kind of all decided that we wanted to get out of trading time for money and switch into like product life, we launched a few products together as 3 founders, which is pretty great because we already had the dynamic. So I always tell people I don't have a repeatable find a founder solution because ours was just kind of like organic in over 20 years, So it didn't. I didn't have an option there, but so that's been quite great. And then our team is about 10 or 12, depending on how you count. So we have, besides the 3 of us, we have 2 full-time people in the marketing side, and then we have a handful of screencaster, video editor, some more technical stuff, an editor, a bunch of little things like this, right? So, and 2 support guys, and I think that's it. So something like this for the team stack. So mostly hourly, except for the 2 marketers, and then we also the 2 support guys are like 3/4 time, I guess. So
obviously, to get from 0 to where you are today, you had some breakthrough. Maybe I think it would be valuable to go through some of these breakthroughs so that, again, it gives us good context on what you used so far and what there is ahead.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we have a couple of things like there's like the marketing side and then the product side. So from the marketing side, the whole time we were basically doing and still are SEO. So that's always been kind of our expertise and how we built a lot of our businesses, and kind of dogfooding our own thing here, I guess, with the having a content marketing platform. But and funny enough, that's actually one of the rules that we have internally is like we're not allowed to add features into our internal blog that we don't turn into real features, so that we're always using the real product as it's integrated for regular customers. So we're no one's allowed to put in a little patch with a conditional statement that's only for us to make something happen on the product. So that keeps us honest with the product, and it really helps. And then we really learn how to fix things in the flow. So that's kind of cool. So anyways, SEO is always been our main source. And then our other channel is generally marketplaces. So we're in the Shopify App Store, the BigCommerce App Store, Teachable, Thinkific, wherever they'll have us in varying levels of integration. So those have been our successful channels there for marketing. Then from a product side, we had a few breakthroughs. The first one was when we started doing our JavaScript integration. So when we originally launched the product, it was just API based. So again, we were static sites. We wanted to make a nice admin panel and then output the data with the API, and then you do whatever you want with it. So that's how we started. And then, we realized a lot of these people, they didn't want to write a whole front end, right? So we started building out, we had demand for this like JavaScript style integration from day one and we were like, well, that's stupid because it's not going to rank. So why would you have a blog if you're not going to be driving content to it? But then we learned around that time, actually around that 2019 time, that Google was actually indexing JavaScript content. And so we ran a bunch of tests ourselves and, wrote this JavaScript integration, which basically allowed people to, on just literally any website, any single random page, they can just drop in our little tiny JavaScript and it outputs the entire blog, all the subpages, all the categories, all the author pages, everything. And it's like, yeah, that's like amazing, so easy to integrate. But now you're doing JavaScript content, which is rendering in the browser, and it's kind of slow. Not as slow as you would think, but slower than running it static, of course. So anyways, but it was working. And so we were like, well, sweet, problem solved. Like now, like we can sell people on the JavaScript for the quick integration. And then when they get serious, then they can use the API integration and go from there. So that was actually a big breakthrough for us because now we could integrate with everything. We didn't need to have some deep integration with their app system or their store. It's like, oh, your builder allows you to make a page called blog. Great. Drag a block in and put our 2 lines of code in and boom, now you have a blog there. And it gave us a lot of flexibility to be basically anywhere. But then of course, then that did come with some of its own problems, which was that it, doesn't load as fast. And there are occasionally random indexing issues. Surprisingly, not very many, but occasionally there'll be some random weird stuff that we can't solve. And then there's like weird problems, like if you share it on Facebook, then that like page that's done with the JavaScript rendering doesn't share with the right image or whatever because that Facebook's preview engine doesn't render the JavaScript and things like this. So we had some little bugs like that, or like annoyances, we'll say. Also, we didn't have access to their sitemap. So, if these guys have a builder, the sitemap is automated by the builder. We don't have access to that. And it turns out you cannot host a sitemap outside of your domain. So in Google Search Console, you can't put in a sitemap that's like at some other domain that's not yours. And so if we don't have access to that, that's a problem, slows down indexing, etc. So anyways, then looping around, we found things like pre-render and learned that like, oh, okay, this is a few years later, we learned that, oh, actually, there is a way that we could basically use Cloudflare workers to create like a static version of these sites. And that was the next big breakthrough for us. So we basically figured out that, we could run our own crawler essentially and print out these pages statically and host them ourselves. And then now that solves all those problems that I just said. We have clean URLs. They show on Facebook. We can now control the sitemap. We can do everything. And it's really easy for users too, because they just have to connect their Cloudflare account. We just have them drop in an API key and we go build the worker and all the stuff. And it's all just like super automated and works very, very well. So that was kind of the second it's funny, the first technological breakthrough, which is what got us to make a big leap, then led to some problems that we had to have the second technological breakthrough to get to the top. But then once we had that figured out, now it's game on, because now we can be anywhere, we can be static, we can solve every single problem, and we can play with the big boys. So that was a big jump for us as well from a product side. So those are kind of our big leaps over the years.
And did it lead to high growth in revenue as well? Like, was it as linear? Like, as you were adding these features, you would grow?
The first thing that I mentioned, the JavaScript thing, was a big one, because
Mm.
then now we can just, it takes the friction level from you need to work with our API and output a whole thing versus like boom, it's in there in 2 seconds. So that's kind of that really led our main first growth trajectory. And I would say the adding the much more complicated to build a static rendering through the Cloudflare workers and all this kind of stuff. That's not something that changes things overnight, but that's something you can feel long term because again, now we can play with the big boys. Now we solve all of those problems. Now, and so while that didn't like see this instant growth jump, it made it so that we were able to hold on to more serious customers and show customers that really knew what they were talking about when they came to us and questioned about the JavaScript rendering. Now we have a real solution, and so it doesn't have that sexiness that the other solution had, which boom, we're up today. So that kind of thing.
Last question before we jump to some of your challenges. You were telling me that a lot of your customers, you have a fair amount of customers in the e-commerce space, but also a quarter of your customers in the education space. I remember during COVID, everybody wanted to teach, everybody wanted to make money online. It was crazy. Since then, people have realized that it's not as easy as they thought it was, or it was not as lucrative. How has this pullback affected you revenue wise? And I know that you had a lot of custom revenue growth in 2020, 2021, 2022. And have you since plateaued, or have you had a drop? Like, what has been the?
Yeah, so definitely during 2020, 2021, we were like rocket shipping. And I was like, oh, we're going to be at 50 million ARR in like a year. But then things kind of settled out a little bit. And it, so yes, we were able to ride that train up for sure. I think fortunately we didn't have the pullback that those companies themselves had, and a lot of companies related to that had, because there was, I guess, the pro and the con of our particular business is that you don't just jump into adding a blog to your site when you're just getting started and have no idea what you're doing. Like usually it's like there's a little bit of a filter. I mean, we definitely have a lot of like newer people, solopreneurs, like we definitely have that cohort. But I guess what I'm saying is, versus like signing up for an online course builder, you might think like, okay, I'm going to start my business, and then like you never build your course and then you cancel, right? By the time they get to us, they probably already made the course, and they
Hmm.
probably now they're looking to market it, right? So it's like, yes, that's a smaller portion of their pie, but then the ones that make it through the funnel there, they're stickier, right? Because now they're not, they're going to start writing some content and whatever. So then when that big retraction happened with all of that customer base, of course we felt it, but we didn't feel it like they did. So when you saw, Teachable and Thinkific and Shopify as well, like having like major customer churn, we didn't feel it quite as hard because the quick to churn guys were not the ones that had blogs, basically, because they hadn't got that far yet. So that was good for us, but I mean, definitely growth slowed tremendously. And fortunately for us, we haven't gone negative, but like we were flat Q4 last year, and that was the first time that we were like, oh, okay, I guess we're not immune to this like slower SaaS economy that basically, I mean, last year in 2023, like all of my SaaS friends were down like 10-15%, even the ones with like the best businesses. So I thought, oh yeah, I guess we're still geniuses, right? And then then Q4 hit and we were flat, and I was like, oh crap, okay, like we need to actually start trying and really try to figure this out. So then we started really focusing like the last year, and we're growing, but it's not huge. Like I think this year we're 12 or 15% year over year or something. So like yeah, we're chugging along in a positive direction, but but it's I feel a lot more comfortable when it's 30-40%, right? So it's so we're basically in a good place. We definitely felt all that retraction. We know that the economy is not in the best scenario globally right now for all of these businesses, but we're holding on pretty good, and our customers are succeeding. I mean, the great thing about our product is that it actually like leads to revenue for them, right? So if they're using our product and they're using it successfully, we're driving business to them. So it's a sticky product when we get all the things right. So that's fortunate for us. But I guess the negative, like when they had the super explosive growth, like yes, we had good growth during that time, but you don't just like wake up tomorrow and say, oh, you know what, I do want to have a content team and an editor and a SEO plan, and that's a few steps in the brain. So we don't get that instant like, yeah, I'll start a course, click. So we're it's slower to grow, but holds stronger, I
More
guess. So
durable.
so, so I
More
feel
durable.
good about being in that place. It's a little more stable.
So for this episode of Indie Board Session, you mentioned to me ahead that some of your core challenges is really about finding new growth levers. There's also a concept of positioning, especially if you're going to go up market. I'm happy that Zsolt is here to help us for that part. And let's address these challenges head on. You mentioned that maybe before, can you go through what you've tried so far to get growth back into groove since your Q4 slump last year?
Yeah. So again, basically, we stuck with what we know, right? So continued on keeping optimizing the SEO and the channels, the app store listings, all that. We've tried paid twice. Over wasn't all just like we did it. I think we did it once this year and once like 2 years ago. And it just doesn't seem like our product price point and like the customer journey like line up with paid ads. So we did some pretty heavy testing to see if we could get the numbers to work, and it just wasn't quite there. We're just not quite at a price point that makes sense. So and when I say paid, I mean Google and Facebook specifically. We haven't tried anything in video on YouTube, or LinkedIn or Reddit or X. So just Facebook and Google. So that was kind of like a no. We couldn't really find anything. The only thing that kind of looked like it was getting traction there was Google, but then we were cannibalizing all of our own SEO results. So if you compensate for that, then it was like, well, yeah, technically these numbers work, but also then our organic conversions are down 30%. So then like now the numbers don't work. So there was that we tried. And then what we are in the middle of trying now, one of our full-time hires that I mentioned is an email person. So as far as copy, and then also the technical side and the lead magnets and all of this kind of stuff. So with that is something that we've never really done beyond the basic onboarding. So now we're doing things like, plan upgrade campaigns, switch to annual upgrade campaigns, win back campaigns, like this kind of stuff. And so we've been working on rolling that out. We'll say only the last few months. So we've had some success there, and I'm assuming that we'll have some more success there as well. But that's also just more of like optimization, not really a new lever. So maybe we're capturing some leads now on some of the SEO pages that we weren't capturing before. So okay, but it's still more of an optimization than a lever. But that is something that we're putting a lot into because we know that that's something that we're leaving on the table. So we're working on that. And I think that's it. Can't think of anything else offhand.
On the Google side, when you were attracting customers through Google Ads and everything, would you say that these were the same type of customers that you're typically attracting, or these were different types of customers?
Same customers, because we were going after keywords that are ones that we already know are for our audience, and yeah, so kind of the same customer spread, the same kind of keyword general demographics. Yeah.
Zol, do you have questions for
Oh,
Jesse?
I do. I always have questions. And one of the things I was making some notes while Jesse was talking about it, and it's so wonderful to see that you already have product market fit. You know what product you are having. And I really enjoy the dropping blog, what problems you are solving. But some of the things what you really haven't talked about, and it's like how your customers are seeing, what problems you are solving. Because you said, hey, we have a drop-in blog, which is really nice, but what is the alternative they are fighting against? Why they are not going with WordPress? And this is where the product's value communication and the whole idea where to go is to figure out why they don't want to go with WordPress. So what problems they have with it, because I know what problem I have with WordPress and I know it, but have they really realized why your product is much better solution for them? Because if we can figure this out, then there is a much bigger space to go to and say that, hey, instead of going forward by customer request, which is always nice because they can help you figure out how to execute, but what is the goal we want to achieve? What was your picture when you said, okay, we had this aha moment, but what they communicated toward you?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, everybody has said that they, want something easier, right? Because they want the main like problem that we're solving at the first step is just, oh, I don't want to run two separate platforms. I have this one platform, maybe it's Shopify, maybe it's Teachable, maybe it's custom coded, and I don't want to deal with this other platform. So that's kind of like the base level thing. But then also is the fact that we actually are integrated. They want that seamless feeling, which if you run any other solution on a subdomain, or even if you hack it into a folder, it's not seamless. It doesn't match your theme. It doesn't have the same header and footer and all of this kind of stuff. So that's kind of the step one of it, is at a core level that I think is why people want to use us. And then like if we go like a bit deeper, then it gets to like once you actually get to know the product, it's like, oh well, yeah, also it has like the 80/20 of every plugin I would ever install in WordPress. And so now I don't have to deal with updating those and the security and, if things like that kind of get in the way. And so that's kind of our goal, was always to like build out as much of it so that you don't ever feel the need that you would want to go elsewhere, because it's all just there and has a very nice interface and this kind of thing.
And that was my first impression as well, because it works. So as a business manager and a lot of those e-commerce websites, they just want to deliver their content. And your solution is the instant solution. It's like, hey, I really want to have this working. I don't want to spend thousands of dollars on engineering to have the same template of two different engines. There's a lot of issue. And one of the big things that you mentioned is security. We know how WordPress is basically a cancer for the web, because it's always hacked. You have to update the plugins, you have to figure out what's happening. But your solution is basically a JavaScript drop-in, and it's not going to be inside my platform. One of the worst things about WordPress, when people are self-hosting it and they have the same product on the same server, WordPress gets hacked and everything else is getting hacked. I see a lot of really good value communication, and it's really interesting because if you are looking at it, it's like, okay, so I know what problems I'm solving. Can I create a market? Can I create this targetable market and say that how many people are in there and what they are getting out of it? And because one of the things about growth is you can only grow as long as you have a market. But if you don't have a defined market, you don't know if I'm at 1% or 100%, maybe you are reached 100%, but is it something that we can open up? And I can see that you are still formulating. It's like, who is the market? And how many people, how many customers are there who can benefit from it?
Right.
This is the point where I would be really curious, because if you can figure out the market, my next question would be, why $39? That's a monthly price for the product. What defined you to say, okay, it's $39?
Yeah, I mean, we're actually in the middle of doing a bunch of price testing now. And we've learned that we used to, just to zoom on pricing a little bit, we used to have two plans that are different than the plans we have now. The first plan was 19 or 24 if you played monthly, and then the second plan was this $39 or $49, depending on monthly or annual. So the lower plan was like a feature gated, and then the higher plan was like an everything plan. And then, we kind of realized that a couple of things that, obviously the smaller customer wasn't working as good. And also, interestingly enough, we had a much higher, like 2/3 of our customers were in the higher plan that had all the features. So then that kind of told us that like this is like a more the $39.49 price point was actually better for our customers, and they actually did want all the things that we offered. So then we tested. First, remove the low plan, and then we just have that plan. We just had the one plan for a little bit. And then at that same time, we were doing a bunch of research to find out what is the value metric. And for a lot of times when you think of some sort of a platform like ours or a CMS or something, the general go-to would be like it's traffic or bandwidth or something, number of blog posts or something like this is generally like a value metric. So then, we would have one plan that's 100 blog posts and one plan that's 500 blog posts or something like this, right? But we actually learned that that's not. Like, we have customers that, have like, very large companies that have like 20 blog posts, but they're the right blog posts that drive a lot of business to them. And even that, then they don't have a ton of traffic because they're in some micro niche of, underground freezers or something that cost $50,000. And so like they have very low search volume, but they're the solution and, this kind of thing. Right. And so then now the bandwidth doesn't count, the traffic doesn't count, the number of blog posts doesn't count, whatever. So then we learned that the value metric is the number of users. So kind of like seats, but yeah. So then it's like, so then we switch to the plans we have now, which is that kind of 39 and 79 or 49.99, which is one user, the solo plan, or 5 users, the team plan. And then we are about to release a third plan, which will be some sort of unlimited users or something, maybe set to price anchor those. But we've also learned that when playing with this pricing, that a big amount of our current customer base, that $39.49 price point, that's the right spot. Like, we feel it because, like, the number of cancellations you get that's kind of based on prices of complaint, it's not zero. So that's how it's not too low, right? But it's enough that like we would definitely feel the resistance if we started at 100, like you would just tell. And then we also tried kind of setting the default sign up as the $100 plan. Like if you just click any CTA on the website, we just made it and like pretty much like 9/10 of the customers all downgrade to the solo until they like grow their team. So, I learned, like, at least for now, I think that we're kind of like about right with our current market base and our current users, because we do have a lot of the solo and small team users. So, I think that I feel that our pricing is correct for those guys. And then I'm hoping that, or curious rather, like, is there enough further up market that makes sense where, again, as like we kind of mentioned about toying with enterprise, or even in the like sub enterprise, right? Like I'm curious where this $99 like kind of small team plan can take us. And then even one further than that is like for larger teams, but still not quite like super enterprise. Right. And see if that can head us in a different trajectory. But that's kind of where we're at now with the pricing and what testing that we've done to kind of, see where that resistance is.
I think that to step back on one thing that Zsolt said earlier about defining your market, I think that what you said earlier, one thing that strikes me is that you should position yourself as the anti-WordPress. The amount of people that want, if you think about the personas, right? The persona of I need a blog that is in the same platform or whatever is more lower level people. But there are people at bigger companies that just don't want to use WordPress, and they made the decision, they thought about it, and they don't like WordPress for some reasons.
Right.
And so, and WordPress is not necessarily seen as a cool company as much today because of the recent challenges that they've had with WP Engine and stuff like that. So my point is that there's value in being the good guy, the anti-WordPress. And you are the anti-WordPress. There's no real there are other blog platforms, obviously, but you're anti WordPress because you're easy. It takes 2 seconds. It's not another platform. Like in a way, you don't have to install 20 plugins to make it work on the SEO side. You don't have to update these things. You have less security risks. So in a way, if you position yourself as the anti WordPress and you take that narrative in your Twitter, maybe somewhere on your website, etc., then you can be defined as something that is bigger than yourself. I mean, WordPress is always defining on TechMeme the percentage of websites that they power in the world. They're always showing we're winning, but some people don't want them to win 100%.
Right.
And if you can lead the resistance in a way, to take Star Wars terminology, that's a huge market because again, 23%, or if 23% of the world don't use WordPress for websites and everything, everybody wants, like everybody that is part of these 23% wants to win together, and you can be at the forefront of that. So I think that's a one opportunity that will change the narrative around your product
Mm.
from more of a tactical product that's very well understood for the lower end of the market, the solopreneurs, the small teams, and that can be understood by bigger companies. Not necessarily, again, not necessarily Nike or whatever, but if you're working at a 2,000 people company or a 1,000 people company, or even a large startups that have decided not to use WordPress for some reasons for their blogs and websites. If I say, I want to do this, but I don't want to use WordPress, you say, oh, but you should think about DropInBlog, very anti-WordPress. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think that there's value there. So one thing is really about this positioning, and positioning as something that is bigger than yourself.
Yeah, I like that. Two thoughts that I have. It's something that I've obviously thought about a lot. And so, one challenge, but also possibly a solution to that, is that a lot of people who are on WordPress. They're there because they built their whole site on it, right? And we're not the whole site; we're just a blog. So we have like kind of a little challenge there, where if we're just blanketly saying like move from WordPress to us, a lot of people built their whole site in WordPress, and so now it's like, well, but what am I going to do with the rest of the site? And then we say, well, it's Webflow or Framer, but now we're like adding layers to this, right? So one solution that I had for that is that we can be the anti WordPress blog, and we could potentially build a WordPress plugin that puts DropInBlog into WordPress and replaces the blog part. So then it solves all that and also extracts kind of like what you were saying, Zsolt, about having the system separate and the security. Like we still actually kind of solve that even in WordPress, funny enough, because now all these plugins that you had and everything you were doing in the blog are now extracted, and that's separate. And now like the people that access the blog, your writers and this kind of stuff, can have permissions just within DropInBlog. They don't touch anything on the rest of your site. Let's say you built a huge WooCommerce site or something, right? Then we could be potentially separate for that. So anyways, that's one idea that I had of a way to like kind of eat the beast from the inside, would be if we made like a really nice WordPress plugin that essentially, yeah, just swapped out the existing blog for ours. But also like that's a big move, and it would have a lot of complications in itself. But anyways, so my concern, I guess I'll just say about just standing on the mountaintops and screaming how, WordPress is dead and come crown us kind of thing. That what about people that all like have their whole site there, right? We don't quite instantly solve that, or maybe that doesn't matter. I don't know. Maybe their real concern is where do I put the blog, because the rest of the site is, there's a million regular website builders that can solve your problem. It's usually, well, but I have 150 blog posts that are ranking. I don't want to screw that up. That's more the mindset. So anyways, just some kind of thoughts on that I've obviously run around in my head a little bit.
I can see your point, and I agreed that it would be a bit of a craziness to just go out and fully concentrate on this. But I think Pascal is right in the point of like, you have to probe different markets, different communications. One of them was this security point, these companies of like get rid of your WordPress, because you are right. Some of the companies are fully WordPress, but bigger companies have this setup of like, okay, they have a home defined website, they have the WordPress website and everything else on them. And for them, it would be a really easy switch. But why it came to my mind, I can talk about one of our customers, and it was really interesting to see the different personas in the market when Shell came to us and they wanted to have better SEO. And I was thinking, it's like, what Shell wants to do with SEO? They
Right.
sell oil, like how it is coming. And it turns out that they still have to have some communication. They still have to have really good SEO all around the world, even if they have 200 visitors. But they have things what they have to meet, and they have to say, we need a secure platform. We need to have this kind of integration, and we are willing to pay amounts which we should not even talk about, but that was why I was asking about the pricing, because if you have a locked-in pricing, your customer cannot pay more than $100 right now. Even if they go out of their way, I come in and say to that, I'm Shell, I want to pay $10,000 a month because this is the solution I'm looking for, but I cannot because this is
Yeah.
it's still a lot. It's $99. But even a meeting, I remember, I cannot name the company, but we had a meeting where they set it up and they said, okay, we want to go and we just want to try out your product. And we said, okay, sure, you have to pay something down and we're going to give you an unlimited access to it. And they are like, okay, so we go on with a price of a nice car so they can try out the product. They would never need it to have this amount of volume, but they are like, okay, because that's $100 for them is a rounding error
Yeah.
on an
Right. Of
invoice
course.
what you sent over, and like, oh yeah,
Mm.
send it back. But the thing is, like, if you are limiting yourself, even with the market, even with the pricing, you cannot have this sudden growth in the market because you never allow the product to
Right.
grow and show some of the signs of. You can have an unlimited plan, and people are signing up and saying, okay, the first 5 user is within the plan, then it's going to be a seed-based plan. You're going to see that some of your customers have 50 marketeer working on it, and now we are making 70% of our revenue on this one customer because it turns out they have a marketing agency and they switch purely to your platform. But what they are doing right now is basically they are sharing passwords and they are trying to go around the limitations, which are artificial limitations. You can always go flexible. And the hard part about it is like what Pascal said, you have to have the opportunity to talk about. You have to have this positioning of like, hey, but we are anti-WordPress. Everyone hates WordPress right now. The VP engine in the buckle was terrible. And even big companies are looking at it as like, we cannot have a provider like this. We cannot rely on a company who is doing such a crazy things. So I would already create a feature instantly of like migrate from WordPress, one click, and we're going to pull everything out from your WordPress and replace everything what you had. And already run into podcasts and then talk about like, hey, you know what happened with VP engine? That's not happening with us. Because people really like this kind of product. It's easy to use. I can start from nothing. I can start in an hour. And if I need more, I can set up the rendering, SEO, everything else. So you have a platform, but it's really hard to grow. And as long as the customer cannot pay you $10,000 a month, you are closing yourself down.
So we've talked about the positioning and framing yourself as a part of a bigger market, so the anti-WordPress or anti-WordPress blog. We talked about also the fact that creating an aperture with your plans so that big companies can recognize themselves. They see your blog as they hear about you through your new branding and everything, and they go to your website. If they say, "Okay, I'm a big company. I have 50 marketers. I need something that does SSO. I need procurement. I need whatever." You need to show them that you speak their language and that you have some of the basic things that they need. Unlimited usage is fine, but I think that enterprise, they want other things. They want security. They want
So
procurement.
what do you guys think that looks like? Like, what does our pricing page look like if we want to like still not completely jump ship on our old setup, but have this very clear that this is one of our offerings. I mean, a lot of companies do both sides, right?
Yeah.
You see it pretty commonly, and like, how could we set up the pricing page to like test the waters for that and just kind of see what the inquiries look like, or what would you suggest there?
One of the three things what you can always just do is set up an enterprise plan, click here, contact us.
Yep.
And that's not going to be anything else, just a meeting. Because if I'm an enterprise right now, I can't even sign up. Some companies literally have their internal regulations of like, you cannot sign up without agreeing with our lawyers that you are signing up somewhere. So they have to figure out how to contact you. But they are looking at the page and say, oh, there is no opportunities for us because this company only focusing on solo and teams.
Yep.
So we are not even able to reach you. One of the things is like enterprise, you don't show price because that's
Right.
something that you're going to talk about, like how much it is worth. And that's why I'm always curious about the pricing because like you have this idea of like we worth $100 a month for the 5 people thing, like possibly. But if they are making, and you said really well, they can create, let's say, $500,000 with your SEO, then is it $100 what you are worth for? And it's like, no, they are thinking like, oh, I would pay $5,000 because this is how much we are getting out of it. Like 1% growth can get us $100,000 extra. So we are willing to pay bigger if we get what we want, but you need to open the possibilities for them. And I can tell you from experience, it's like you don't have to have everything ready. So you don't have to have NDAs, everything, because they really want to work with you. There is a lot of people coming in enterprise and they want to make a change, and they are coming and say, hey, there is this really awesome solution. I talk with them. They are really friendly. They are solving the problem what we have. Let's say they have an internal security problem about WordPress, and someone who is upcoming want to show them is like, I have a solution. This company is willing to work with us. And on as you go, you're going to figure it out. Like even security certificates, everything else, they are so like they always want to work with you. They just want to have a solution.
So in this case, then, to talk about the actionable, like, do you think we should add the third plan separately,
Absolutely.
but not the enterprise one, and then have like maybe like a horizontal bar at the bottom that's like enterprise, contact us, blah blah blah, SSO?
I would go with just trying it out, having the first connection, and saying that just showing them is like there is an enterprise option, and details are figured out. If you need more users, if you need more certificates or something else, click here. We can talk about it, and then you're going to have the first contacts, because the best thing about people who have a problem, they're coming to you and they're going to explain everything. And you ask them like, let us come back a week later and we're going to figure out everything else, the pricing, everything. And as you go forward, you get more information about what they are asking about, what they have a problem about. Then you can start to list out the features, because they're going to ask, hey, do you have ISO 27001? It's like, no, is it important? Oh, no, it's just we are asking because if this is the category, then it's necessary. Then you can give it up. It's like, oh, we don't. Do you have a single sign-on? And they're going to be, yeah, we need a single sign-on. We
Sure.
cannot sign up. And it's like, oh, then we have a solution. Then you set up an Okta, you set up everything else, and the
Right.
next thing your pricing page is going to be, oh, do you need single sign-on? That's enterprise only. And it's not a big deal because you can still have a middle company. You don't have to have like Salesforce or a big company who's saying, okay, we need single sign-on. We have a 500 people company. Enterprise, we don't know how much it costs. They come in and they turn out they are not big customers, but they need single sign-on. You say, okay, $500 a month. Is it fine for you guys? Yeah, sure. You already make 5 times more than the
Right.
biggest they ever can use.
Yeah, I think that it's good at the beginning to open the dialogue so that you understand who's coming through that. And then once you have something that is repeatable, you can define maybe two pricing or maybe one, because you can see, you need to know what each tier wants. And today you don't. And so that's why I'm worried about giving unlimited users or unlimited whatever when you don't really know who is in front of that.
Mm.
So I think that it's a good idea to have, you have your two plans. You have another plan which is like enterprise plan or something like that, where you can say need SSO, needs procurement, needs need more users, contact us. And when people understand, like by showing that you understand these needs, but you just don't want them to, you don't want to skim them. You understand their needs as buyers, because
Mm.
especially for a blog, at least on the website, this is not something where it's easy for a low level marketer to add their credit card because it's so
Yeah.
visible for their company.
Mhm.
They cannot even have credit card.
Like it's
Yeah.
it's it's a very important thing. It's not a feature. It's like a blog as part of a big website is like a key component of a marketing and communication of a company. So they can't just make that rash decision that they could for smaller features like a pop-up builder or some kind of stuff like that.
Which, yeah, I think is like the pro and the con of our product, right? It's something where like we have the ability to potentially go up market, but you know it's going to be a little more work, right? But then if we land those deals and we're the real solution, then this can be a really good place to be sitting, right?
Absolutely. And I will not even push you because I think you are in the good position right now with this SMB kind of setup because every product goes through this product-led growth and the smaller customers are picking up and bigger are starting to see. Some of the times you get to enterprise by having no smaller team using your product and they join a bigger enterprise and they want to carry it over and say that, hey, I will use this. This is awesome. So you always want to have your bottom line a wide number of people who, when they move forward, they want to bring your solution. They are saying that,
Mm.
hey, we have so much problem with WordPress, but we solved it in our place. We should do the same. But in closing up the gates, because even your pricing, and that's why I was asking about it. If I'm looking at your current pricing now, I see that basically you are selling 4 seats for the extra $50 because all features included. So it's exactly the same plan. So
Yep.
basically you price the seats, you just named it differently, which is like if I'm coming in, I see that okay, it's not defined. Like I'm getting everything else. What's going to be the bigger plan? Or features included with more seats. Fine, but then name the child. Like you are selling seats,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's perfectly fine. Even to tell us some exclusives, what people don't need, like even the team accounts. Okay, do you want to have permission management? It's like a lot of companies have a billing person setting up. Like the solo person doesn't need, but the team needs, and after they are growing, they are seeing value. Because the problem with all features included, it's like, oh, I'm getting anything anyways. Why would I care? So people doesn't feel that they're getting more for their money when they have to upgrade. It's like, oh yeah, we are upgrading because one more person joined us, but they don't feel like, oh, I'm signing up for the next plan because I see what value I'm getting into the next plan. And that's perfectly fine for them as long as there is a reason, like not all arbitrarily just limiting 10 blog posts. You want them to write as much blog posts as they can ever can. Like
Right.
that's the best. Have 1 million blog posts in the first because then they cannot leave. Now the question is like what they want to do with this 1 million blog posts. And that's why even your target market is something what you, if you define, they're going to tell you the features you need and they're going to tell you how to grow. I think one of the stupidest thing what I always tell people is like, listen to your customers, which is obvious, but it's much harder to do because they are telling everything. There is a lot of noise, but
Yep.
you have to recognize the pattern and say, okay, so overall they want something. Like this terrible Henry Ford quote, which is not from him, it's like if I would listen to the people, they would want that to have a faster horse, which was not him. But the idea behind it is real because people are coming to you, it's like, oh, we need something. It's like, oh, I heard it from 6, 7 different people, and I see that there is something behind. This is how I can solve for them, and it's crazy, but you can get so much revenue all from coming to the people and say that I solved your problem. And they are so happy that they are personally getting you thousands of dollars of revenue because they are like, you don't know how much they are losing not to have this solution. Your product now cost $50, but I can assure you, most of the customers of yours making much more than $50 on your product, and they would be willing to scale up much further. It does not mean you have to rob them. You have to find a solution where you are giving more, and they are getting more, and they are paying more. But that's the hard part. I cannot even tell. It's really hard to figure out.
Right.
But if you can figure it out,
Yeah, and I will say that that's like why we settled on the user thing, and there is some logic behind why we did the 1 and 5 instead of sell additional seats. But I guess the main reason why that became a thing is because it is the value. Like that is the value and why they're getting the value, and not about sharing logins. We don't care if they share their solar user login. Is that it comes with the permissions, like the fact that now that you can. Any of those users can have granular permissions so when you hire a new writer off of Upwork, then they can't like delete blog posts, or they can only publish to draft or something like this. So that's why we found that to be good. But then also the why we did the 1 to 5 jump is we basically did an analysis. Our plan used to include unlimited users. So we were able to look at our existing customer base and see how many users everyone was getting. And we found that to be a nice cutoff where like, if we just add a user for like $10, $20 or something, then we ended up actually making more getting these guys to jump to the double price and getting more users than they might on average use. So I'm just explaining what our logic was, but behind those decisions. And then the logic, and maybe you guys can give a suggestion on this. Again, the plan as we're doing slow testing, the reason why we wanted to add the unlimited plan with the users was that there's actually not a ton of people that have more than like 10 or 15 users, even on really big companies, because like the people that are actually touching the blog, it's not like 70 people usually, right? It's the content team and the editor and a couple of other, so, and the point of having that unlimited is then we could have that price be like $500, and then the brain, then it's like, oh great, we're a big company, $500 makes sense, whatever. And then also it would maybe price anchor the $100 plan, where people would be like, oh wow, I'm getting basically the same thing, but it's $100 instead of $500. And then my hope, which again, you guys can give your advice here, would be then we would add the enterprise below. That's like, if you want all the real enterprise stuff, then contact us. And then we can just, create these larger pricing points for, the more enterprise like features like SSO and like ISO or whatever the things are that they want, right?
they're going to do that.
But tell me I'm wrong, and how I should revise that.
I think that you need to. I mean, what you have today works as it is. So I would not necessarily change what you have. I think that what we talked about earlier, the good thing about it is that it's flexible enough, is that it gives an opening, and that opening creates conversations.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you have the enterprise plan and you're mentioning the things that they can have, then you're not giving themselves specifics. You're giving them cues, and then the specifics will come after conversations, tens of conversations. I mean, that you need to have.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the most, in a way, when you're thinking about enterprise, you have to think almost the opposite of self-serve, because you need that in self-serve. You need to be things very, very explicit so that they don't contact your support team. For enterprise, you need them. You want them to contact you. You want to talk to them, because it's only when you talk to them that you can sell them something for $5,000-$10,000 a month.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they will not put their credit card, or there's no way for them to pay you $10,000 a month and submit their PO number and all that stuff, right? I mean, even if your product is self-serve, they need to talk to you. They need to understand. They need you to fill a form in Ariba or whatever, or Coupa. I mean, that's all the thing that you need to go through. So I think that's very important. You create the opening. The same way that we were talking about the anti-WordPress blog, or even create the anti-WordPress alliance. I was thinking about, in your website, you have something for agencies, like an agency plan. I don't think it's a bad idea. You told me, I think, that the other day, that it was not super successful. It was okay, but not super successful. again, I think that if you're a Webflow agency, or if you're like your former agency and you're creating static sites or dynamic sites that are complex, not using WordPress, you can think of drop-in blog or you cannot. But if you're creating that alliance, for example, then people say, "Oh, I want to be part of that alliance. I don't want people to use WordPress because I'm a Webflow agency. And if people are going to switch to WordPress, that's bad for my business." So you create a team that's working for you and you're part of a team. Whereas, again, today, your drop in blog, which is obviously the name is very good, but it's very tactical. It
Yep.
feels tactical. And I think that more broadly, your next step is to be a bit more strategic, both in your positioning, in your partnership strategy, and also in allowing brands of all sizes that don't fit the mold of your first two plans to get to you, have these conversations so that you can decide what's your ideal go to market with them. If you need to create a third plan that is self serve or not, and what matters for these customers. For one of our products at Nusa Labs, we created an enterprise plan mostly because big companies they wanted to use their timers, the countdown timers, whenever they wanted throughout the year, not a monthly thing, and they wanted to have a PO to use a PO. That's it. That's
Yep.
all they wanted. And so once you determine what they want, you create a plan that accommodates them, and they're willing to pay way more than they charge for everybody else.
Right.
And so in your case, you need to create that dialogue. We had that dialogue ourselves before determining what people want.
Yep, I definitely agree. One of the things, Jesse, what I see a lot of people is boxing themselves up, and they are thinking like, this is what I can do. This is the best what I can get out of it. Like even limiting themselves
Yep.
into a possibility instead of going out and see that if I'm building a company which can scale or grow or anything, allowing the customers to do more, then you can see what they're going to do with it and what problem they are solving. And the biggest learnings I ever had is always sitting down with those customers, and literally I had things where I called them up of like, can you help me figuring out where you would go with this company? I'm not going to do what you are saying, but I would be really curious about what you would do with the company. And they gave me everything what I had to do. Obviously, I had to filter it out, but they told me it's like, oh, we actually have this problem where we want to schedule something. It's like, oh, we can build a scheduler. It's like, oh yeah, because our internal team said they're going to build the feature. It's 4 people. They take a sprint over it. It cost us like $20,000. How much you could deliver for? It's like, oh, don't worry, monthly $50 and yours. And they already made a lot of money saved because they're like, we don't have to allocate this money. But I just always let them to talk with me, call me up anytime, even though I had to sit on 2 a.m. calls and 6 a.m. calls and like whenever they have the time. But the best thing is like if you allow customers to contact you and continuously tell you what they need, like it sounds like custom features at first, but then
Right.
you can realize you don't have to give it to everyone. And that's why I really always against this all features included,
Mm.
because giving, let's say, post scheduling when you publish something for a solo member, it does not really make sense. They sit down, they write it when they have time, and they publish it, and they don't care. For bigger teams, they have plans. This is when we're going to release everything else. So you gave a feature for free to someone who doesn't use it, so they're never going to appreciate it because they don't care. And the other teams going to see it's like, hey, it's for everyone. Like, why would I care? There is no value behind it. But if they are like, okay, this is something we need because it's our profile, now I have value appreciation behind it. And that's why these limitless ideas are usually actually hurting the companies. Like
Mm.
there is no appreciation of the things.
Yeah, one thing that my pricing consultant mentioned was that you can do a test where you look through your features and find features that I think it was less than a third of the users are using, and then you pull them out and create them as add-ons. So then, like,
Yeah.
even so, the plans can still be as they look now, kind of like include like between the plans themselves are not different, and then these are these like add-on items that you can use for expansion revenue. But I feel like I mean, that's maybe getting a bit in the weeds on the idea of like, yeah, trying to. I think like, we can play around and optimize a lot of those little things, but the we're trying to figure out the bigger picture here. Like, do
Yeah.
we have a play in enterprise, and how do we experiment with that? And let's say we put that on there and we don't get a lot of inquiries. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's not a demand for it. It could also mean that we need to get to them somehow. So I don't know how do you recommend, beyond just putting it there and seeing who shows up, how we could kind of MVP this concept?
I always had this idea, which I tried to translate from the engineers of like, this saying mobile first. When you are designing a website, it should work on mobile and then it works for everyone else. I did the same thing with enterprise. So when I was designing about like what direction we are taking, I always took, okay, this is what we want to do. It should work for enterprise and then it should work for everyone else, because if it works for enterprise, then it works for everyone else. Let me say, it's like we had a product with a single user. There was no team setup, no nothing. So when we sit down, it's like, okay, we know that we are not enterprise yet, but we know we want to work with them in the future. So what they're going to have, what kind of requirements, leave room for it. And when we are there, we can talk with them. So we set up SSOs as like in the code to have a point where we're going to connect it. We planned everything out, and we actually already started to advertise. It's like, do you need a single sign-on? Contact us. And people came. And we are like, okay, we're going to price it later. We're going to figure out everything later, because we planned for the opportunity to sell something which we don't have just yet. But instead of boxing us ourselves, we always have the room of like, okay, we're going to sell something which we will. I would advise against having add-ons, really defined pricing and everything else, because that's like killing you. You make promises, your customers are going to hate you if you take it away. But not having the opportunity to buy more in some kind of way really just limiting you, because if you analyze a product in its state and said, okay, 5 people is our divider, because that was your product already set up for this, but you don't have any incentive to have more people to sign up. If you have anything that brings in more people, then you're going to have more. I would not say that seats are really working in this kind of context, because you are the service provider, you are not a seat provider. In an Asana kind of situation where everyone benefits from each seat of use, your value is like how many blog posts, how many revenue I'm driving, and what I'm giving to the customer is priced somewhere differently. I could not even guess it right now, because this is something that you have to test and figure out. But I would go with the leanest way, and instead of overthinking it, just putting a button with a mail to your
Yeah,
inbox
yeah, of
and
course.
have the enterprise click it. And you don't care, because it's like 10-minute investment. If
Right.
you're going to get an email in the next 3 weeks, you are happy. If you know, you come back in 3 weeks, do something else, and then
Right.
try. And you always just adding those possibilities, because right now they cannot do it.
Yeah, I would say that to add to what Zolt said, I think that if you want to have enterprise, you will need to go through the positioning exercise that we talked about also, because they need to feel that you're part of something bigger. You're solving a problem for them that is bigger, because again, the decision maker at a big company for or a bigger company for a blog is not a technical person. It's mostly a marketer that has made a platform decision to not use WordPress in that case,
Yeah.
and that is looking for something that works and that is easy and secure. So that's something that you need to have in mind. So I would change something on my positioning on my homepage to make sure that I'm defining myself as the anti WordPress blog and that I mean something there. So that's number one. That will, and then if you communicate with that on Twitter, on LinkedIn, what have you, that will attract people that don't want WordPress and that will be against it. And the good thing about your case is that WordPress is big, everybody knows them. So the people that don't like them, they couldn't express themselves and now they can. So that will generate awareness. And then by opening the door through what Zolt said in the pricing page, then you're leaving them an opportunity to chat with you, have these conversations. So I think that, frankly, if you use that framework of opening the aperture, making sure that you're part of the same team, and then opening the dialogue, I think you could still have inbound that way. No, obviously, if you can't do that, you can always try to find through different websites, which platforms people are using. And if they're not using WordPress, you can tell them, hey, we are the anti-WordPress blog. We allow to do XYZ. You could always try outbound that way, and it doesn't hurt. But I think that you might be surprised, positively surprised, by what putting content that is a little bit spicy about something but it's still, and you're from Bangkok, so you know your spices, uh, but that is a bit spicy about something that matters to people and that it explains your product decisions, will get you people. But again, today there's just so many features you can explain. Whereas if you're thinking about why it matters to, why you can be successful without being in the WordPress ecosystem necessarily, that's a much bigger dialogue than just saying, hey, now you can do a little bit of SEO, or, oh, now you can do a little bit of AI, which is something that everybody is saying. Everybody's saying the same thing, but only you can say that they can craft a new path.
Absolutely. And one of the things I want to sum on my part is like, I'm not recommending always enterprise, because this is going enterprise. It's multiple years. Some of your deals, even if you open tomorrow, would close next summer, and that's even a short term. It could work, but not having the possibility is always against you. And what I would do in your position is like, I would test everything. It's like, try to sell things which you don't have just to everyone and see where people are buying, because you have a really good platform which has an opportunity to scale, but it has to have everywhere. I would go with Pascal Sider and try out, because people really like standing out. It's like, if you have a lukewarm market where everyone's just like saying the same, and you stand out, it's like, oh, we have an ideology. Ideology is one of the best way to sell. But the second is like, try out everything and then try different markets, but really try to aim them very well. So if you have an enterprise, but only enterprise going to click it, yeah, that's fine. If you go with SMBs and you are going with the scaling, that could be a ludicrous market. Shopify, the platform that carries you, did the same thing. They go for the SMB, and they actually have a wonderful writing about how they go sales-led growth at the end of their growth line, because that's where they already had every feature what they could sell, and they just had to change the pricing, set up everything else. It's a lot of effort, but they get there. Now the question is like, which one gets you more revenue, which one furthers the product much better, because there is no SaaS product which is done. It can never be done. So your next developments, your next items, what you deliver for the customer, who is going to be this customer group who is benefiting the most, and how you're going to acquire them? Because even small companies, if there is 1 million small company who you can sign up next year, or 5 enterprise, and both of them is giving you the same, it doesn't make you can go with both of them,
Right.
but both of them has to have the opportunity to get your product.
So now we're going to finish with some round of questioning that is going to be more fun.
The quick fire.
So we talked about spicy take. What is the most overrated tool on the SaaS market today?
Overrated tool on the SaaS market. I was thinking you should have sent me these ahead of time so I could have some time to marinate. But let's see. What's the most overrated tool? Oh, I know what it is right away. Slack.
Okay.
Ooh, that's strong. I say
One sentence. Why?
I can't stand it. It just ruins everyone's workflow. I mean, we have a remote team all over the world, and I prefer mostly async. So I feel like the conversation should mostly happen in a project management system, whatever works for you. And yes, there still needs to be some sync, but when there's just like 25 like water cooler channels and everyone's just yapping all day, then work doesn't get done. And then everyone, when they come online, especially when it is a global team, then there's 400 messages from yesterday, and then everyone on the team spends an hour and a half reading through these and then adding their 2 cents, and it's just super inefficient and bad for mental health. So I'm very anti Slack.
Okay, if you sold DropInBlog tomorrow, what splurge would you indulge?
What splurge would I indulge if I sold DropInBlog tomorrow? Maybe I'd pick a random Four Seasons resort, and I would fly there tomorrow in like Emirates first class and enjoy a breath of fresh air away from SaaS metrics.
And my last question, which is one of my favorite interview questions. What did you learn from your mother?
Oddly, I was just thinking about this today. I don't know why, but
Okay.
I learned fiscal responsibility. How to balance a bank account, how to like how to math the math on credit cards and this kind of stuff. And I think that multiplied itself throughout my life. Whether or not I always listened, but at least I knew how it worked.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jesse. Thank you, Zsolt. That marks the end of this episode.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate all the advice.